Hey guys, hey, welcome back to Coffee Talk. I'm here with Sarah Leahy. Welcome, Sarah.
Hey, Adam.
Sarah is the youth minister down at Sacred. No, I'm sorry. I just think of Sacred Heart. It is Our Lady of the Sacred Heart Parish
Yeah.
down in Orchard Park. So, but you spent a long time over at the diocese, and you've done ministry before that. So, you are here today on Coffee Talk. This is your first round on Coffee Talk, so we can get started maybe with who you are. Can you introduce yourself to the people?
Sure. Hi, everybody. It's great to be with you. I am the youth minister and service coordinator at Our Lady of the Sacred Heart in Orchard Park. I've been there since this past summer. And prior to that, like Adam said, I was at the diocese with the Department of Youth and Young Adult Ministry for about 7.5 years. And before that, I was involved in ministry down in Florida when I lived there. We did a lot of volunteer parish youth ministry and young adult coordination stuff. So, yeah, I've been doing ministry for a while. I am married, have a second grade son, and living the dream.
All right. So awesome. Well, thanks for jumping on here. So, what kind of got this conversation started was a phone call that you reached out to me about World Youth Day. And so, yeah, it's in 2023. It's in Lisbon. We've been chatting about it kind of along the way, just to kind of bring people up to speed, but it got pushed back a year because of COVID. So it was supposed to happen next year.
Right.
Not this coming summer, but the following
2022, right.
So I did a little preliminary work when it first started coming on scene. I'm like, oh, all right, I'll kind of tickle the keys a little bit, maybe get a couple quotes. And then when they pushed it back here, I'm like, oh, I got time. And stuff over here was blowing up, so I'm like, I'm going to put this on the low burn. But thankfully, because of that call that you said, it really kicked it back onto my plate of like, wow, I should get back into motion with this. Time is moving pretty quick. And so just a couple of years goes by really quick. But World Youth Day, Portugal, Lisbon, it's coming. You're taking a group, right?
I am taking a group, yes.
Wow, it's exciting.
Yeah, and other groups are welcome to join us if they want. Yeah, it does seem, World Youth Day is one of those things that it always seems really far away. When I worked at the diocese, St. Greg's was one of the groups that came with us to Krakow. We had about 200 people from the Diocese of Buffalo come to Krakow with our group. And we started planning 3 years out. And there's not a lot of things in your life that you plan 3 years out. Like even a wedding, usually maybe one,
Right.
or a little more. But 3 years is a long time. And a lot of potential pilgrims would be like, I don't know what I'm doing in my life then. It's like, neither do I. But we're going to be doing this because it's going to be on our calendars for a long time. And it takes a long time to plan. It also takes a long time to fundraise. So that's really the biggest push of 2 years is if you start fundraising now, you can really cut down that cost and make it more reasonable. So
Yeah. And that's everything that I've heard from just about everyone I've talked to about it so far. I don't know what I'm doing in 23. It's like, well, put it on your calendar. You know what you're doing. Like,
Yep.
yeah, there you go. But it does seem a long way off. But in terms of fundraising, unless you have the cash that you're just pulling, I'm like, I got that, no problem. If you're just throwing that on the table, then yeah, 3 years is a long way. But
we're youth ministers, so we don't have that kind of cash in our back pocket, and we know most of you don't either.
Right. So yes, fundraising is a huge part of that. And the more time you have to fundraise, the more likely you're going to hit your goals, and have most of it paid. And so the more you work, the harder you work at it. As a team, that builds between the groups that's going, but then less money you're pulling out of your own pocket to do. So maybe we can start at Poland, right? Because that was an awesome trip, an incredible trip. I mean, I went to World Youth Day in 2005 in Germany, and that rocked my world. And at that point I was like, this is amazing. I didn't think of church being so huge. You
Mm-hmm.
know, you hear of it, but you don't see it on a large scale
Mm-hmm.
unless you're there.
Mm-hmm.
And World Youth Day is just an event like anything else. And so when I was there, I was like, wow, this is amazing. And in '07, we did a pilgrimage to Rome. And I was like, wow, I think I've seen everything I need to see in the world, you know? And so when 16 came, I'm like, World Youth Day, pilgrimage, been there, done that. This isn't for me. Like, we'll take a group. I'm not expecting anything for myself. Like, it would just be good to kind of be a part of and give the opportunity for others, you know, to lead with. So it's like, yeah, cool. Rocked my world spiritually, you know. And I thought that I didn't expect much spiritually out of it. You know, not to say that it was going to be nothing, but what I didn't expect was how much it was going to just pour down on me.
Mm-hmm.
And that whole trip was just beautiful, you know. So I found that to be just an incredible experience, just personally, but even as a group leader of trying to figure out like how do we plug in with other people and travel, and you know, you guys did such a good job, you know, pulling that trip together. I mean, you had 200 people from the diocese that you had to get over the puddle and then across cities. You know, that's no small feat. So maybe you can share a little bit from your perspective, like what that was like, kind of lining up the shot to go. Like, was that intimidating? And then what the experience was being over there.
Yeah, sure. I feel like I can't talk about the pre-planning and organization without giving a huge shout out to Mike Slish and Kathy Goller if they happen to listen to this, because really I was kind of the third level team. Like, they did a lot of the work. But going back to the beginning, it was actually before Mike worked on our staff, and Alex and I had started doing workshops. It really started with meeting with a team of priests, other people who had gone to World Youth Day. The diocese hadn't planned a pilgrimage to World Youth Day in a very, very long time. I think maybe since Toronto. So, and that is obviously an easier like feet than flying over the ocean too. So it wasn't like a pull out the book and this is what we've done every diocesan World Youth Day pilgrimage. So it was really, let's talk to other priests and people who have gone, people who have brought smaller groups. I think almost every World Youth Day has had someone from the Diocese of Buffalo go. So there's World Youth Day pilgrimage experience within our diocese, but that was really the first, we're going to all come together and have a big contingency together. And so there were meetings, and then I just remember 3 years out going to different parishes and giving presentations saying this is what it is to parents, to young adults, to youth ministers, young adult leaders. So it really, that started planting the seeds. And then getting closer, you know, we got excited as more and more people signed up, and we did, I think my favorite part of the planning was our pre-pilgrimage retreats we did together. And really those helped spiritually journey, because there's the logistics, but that's really not the most important part. It is an important part of safety, and there's not a lot of room when your basic needs aren't met for, you know, higher spiritual experiences, when, you know, your plane doesn't make it on time or you don't have your luggage or whatever.
Right.
So logistics are important, but we wanted it to be something that brought people closer to God, to the church, to Christ. So, but I remember, you know, 200 people like organizing when we started getting their passports and kind of putting their photo like on the file. Like, we just started praying for every person whose passport we photocopied and clipped together. Our staff did a lot of intentional prayer over the pilgrims and the pilgrim groups. And but it was the day we left, we had mass at down at OLV in Lackawanna, and it was if you remember, very hot.
Yep. Oh
It
yeah.
was in it was in July. OLV is not air conditioned, as amazing of a place as it is. And we said, well, this will be good because we're going to be hot at World Youth Day. And like people are going to have to get used to being hot. I can actually honestly say I think I was the hottest in the pilgrimage, the mass of departure. Um, and so it was beautiful, warm. But then it was, I had a bus, Kathy had a bus, Mike had a bus, and Betsy had a bus she was helping us out once we got to Poland. But I think we only took 3 buses to the airport up in Toronto. And it was then that we're like, Kathy, Mike, and I, at one point, we just like grabbed each other's hands. We're like, we're taking 200 people to Poland. And the magnitude of that, when it was really happening and unfolding. Luckily, by that time, the train is moving and we're doing it. So
Right.
we said a really quick prayer together and got on our buses and just it was there's so many memories from that. So I'll pause there in case you want to lead more discussion in a different direction.
No, I mean, that's great stuff, and hearing, I think the journey from pilgrims is very unique because I think everyone's perspective of the journey is different. Like everyone is coming with different places on the map, just spiritually of, where are you in relationship to Jesus? And like, as you're getting closer to departure, you're like, what did I sign up for? This is real. Like, what am I going to expect? Yeah. And when we get over there, the first landings, the first stops, you're getting out of the airport, and you're like, okay, we're here. Did you feel any anxiety at that point? Maybe not anxiety, but like nervousness, or do you feel like it kind of calmed down once you're over there and you're in the midst of, all right, let's go, let's get it?
Yeah, I think it was more let's go. Like it was a lot of more just excitement, and I knew we had like good planning ahead of time, so I felt comfortable in the World Youth Day is can be very unpredictable. We can talk about that too. But I felt like we had done everything for, to be able to just cross those bridges when we got to them. But I wasn't nervous really once we were there, more excited. And looking around, I do remember being in the airport in Warsaw and seeing pilgrims' faces light up of suddenly you're in an airport and none of the signs are in English anymore. And that's when it hits you that I really am someplace very different. And what's this going to entail?
That airport was unique. You go walking in there, you're like, oh man, like it had this Slavic feel. If you can picture it, like in my mind, I was thinking Poland is some Soviet bloc country that was just kind of militarized, just concrete structures and barbed wire, and walking through that airport, I'm like, yep, exactly how I pictured it.
Warsaw as a whole city definitely has more of that vibe because it was taken over by Russian control, and a lot of their buildings in Warsaw had been demolished and rebuilt under Soviet.
Yeah, and that was really interesting. But that was my thought and expectation going into it. And I'm Polish myself, and so, as an American Pole, like we were kind of ashamed of being Polish, maybe not ashamed, but I was, because there was always jokes growing up of how many Polacks does it take to turn a light bulb, right? And we heard all of those things, so you're just kind of like, yeah, like I'm Polish and Irish.
I was going to say I'm Irish, so I can appreciate those cultural references people make. Yeah.
We never saw any of the beauty of the Polish people or Poland. you know. And we had some traditions growing up, you know, just kind of based around food or whatever the case was, but it wasn't very heavily steeped in it, you know.
And
But
what, sorry to interrupt, what
yeah.
generation of
So
Polish
my
American are you? Like,
so my grandparents were first born here.
okay. So your great grandparents were in Poland.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they came over here. And on my father's side, the story of great granddad Peter and his wife Mary were being conscripted by the Russians. You know, they were coming down the street, and it was like that story of just leave with nothing and show up here. And that's what they did. They left because the Russians were coming to call them. They were going to just draft them into World War One. And not even a draft, it was just being conscripted. You know, they're just handing people guns and, all right, time to get moving. And they didn't want anything to do with that. They weren't going to fight for the Russians. So they came over here to the States and started a life and just worked in factories, you know, and they just worked hard and just did that immigrant dream of just showing up to America and starting a new life. And that's what they did. And when they came here, it wasn't that you're Polish here, it was you're American. And so they didn't pass on those traditions as much. Some of the foods, you know, as you're growing up, but you know, my dad wasn't taught Polish. They didn't teach him. My grandparents knew Polish, but that's where it ended, you know. And they just said, "No, you're American now," you know, and that's it. And so then here we are, you know, a couple generations removed from that, and not knowing where we came from so much. So we did a little homework ahead of time, and on my mom's side, there's a Kraisman side of the family, and we still have a connection to the people over in Poland, the family over in Poland. And so our ancestral home was on the grounds of Auschwitz in Auschwitzim. And when they took over that village, I mean, they bulldozed most of that place to put in the camp, but the family ancestral home was left standing and used as officer quarters. And so then it was returned back to the family later. And so it's still in family hands. So we were trying to get like a rendezvous with the family over there, but it didn't work out. There's timing and language barriers to like get that in motion. But
so did you see that house when we visited Auschwitz?
No. I didn't know what it looked like leading up to it or where it was. I knew it was on the grounds somewhere, but it's a big place.
Right. And we didn't see every inch of it either, so it could have been not where we were. Yeah.
Right. So it was kind of a missed opportunity, but it was one of those things like walking through Auschwitz, just being like, my family would have known this area.
Well, yeah.
Well, right. And so that was just crazy. And so just reconnecting to heritage was wild. And even just the culture, the food, the architecture, the beauty of the church was something that just blew me away, you know, talking about expectations, you know. And so that was radical on my side, you know, just being there. I'm like, not what I expected.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, Krakow is so different from Warsaw,
right.
like where the history has been preserved, and the buildings look very different. And yeah, that's thanks for sharing that story. How much you know, you see God wrote your family's life story right there, and in such a different way, and how interconnected that makes you to other people's stories on Auschwitz. You know, like your family wasn't there, but I just try to imagine, you know, if I learned, or in generations, that in Sarah and Jimmy Leahy's backyard of West Seneca, if someday that became a military installation where things were happening, you know, hopefully nothing like what happened at Auschwitz will ever happen again, but it could be anything that happened that, to me and my family, that's our that's just our backyard. That's where we play and stuff. But
Right.
the land changes usage, and how is that part of your memory and your family's footsteps? It's really interesting.
It really is, and I still think about it and like, wow, like how is this is just a crazy type of like family history
Yeah.
that, and I love doing family tree things, so I'm
Mhm.
always kind of
Have you done Ancestry.com?
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I've got the family tree. I'm always updating when I find new things, and new family members come along. I plug them in and just kind of keep up on that. But the gentleman the distant cousin on my mom's side, who just has this vast family tree on the Craisman side, and that goes up into the 1700s,
Oh, wow.
which is really cool to kind of follow along with, But that stuff is fascinating. And so when you go on things like World Youth Day, you're outside of your comfort zone in the places that have rich history and story behind it. And that's not even talking about on the faith side, but just the places that you see, especially over in Europe. It's not like, we're going to Arizona.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
These mountains have been around for a while.
I mean, that's, I think, one of the things that struck me the most. Krakow was my only World Youth Day experience. I'm jealous that you actually went like when you were. How old were you in 2005 for Germany?
21.
21. Like that's like such a great. I mean, that's really like a great age to first experience it. In every age, you get something different out of it. But for me, I mean, World Youth Day is the Catholic Olympics, literally.
That's a good way of putting it.
And I have never been to the actual Olympics. So I had never been to a gathering where literally people from every corner of the world were there. Less people from some corners of the world than others, but there were pilgrims there from, every continent. There were pilgrims there from places I had never heard of. There's the faith side of that, which is deep. And I could talk about that for a long time, but even it just made me feel more connected to humanity in the world. And I remember reading, like, after that pilgrimage and time went on, suddenly world news, I absorbed it differently. If I heard about some natural disaster someplace, like it would flash in my mind, I met a person from that country. I wonder how that person is. And we met briefly at World Youth Day, and it wasn't like we're going to be pen pals forever and ever and best friends, but like you meet a lot of people in passing, or you might talk to them in line, or when you're waiting to go into a church or at a mass, or you never even really met them, but you sung and prayed right next to them. And people wear, shirts to represent what country they're from, have flags, you can kind of see the different countries. And having that experience changed how it made the world both bigger and smaller to me, in the solidarity of the one human family became very tangible at World Youth Day, and I've never lost that. I've thought about it in this pandemic, how we're all experiencing the same thing in different ways in different countries, but I can't wait to see how God uses World Youth Day Lisbon to bring together all of these people who experienced coronavirus wherever they were. And then in 2023, God willing, coronavirus will be a distant memory. We will have moved past it, but we all experienced that, and that's suddenly common ground with anybody you meet. That's another layer of something that we've all shared, and you can just see how God is the author of all humanity, of all colors, of all nations, and we're all the same in a lot of ways, a lot of beautiful ways, and different in a lot of beautiful ways. But That to me is like kind of the power of World Youth Day. You see, well, we are all God's children. Um, I remember at the opening World Youth Day Mass, I turned to my husband and I said, I'm pretty sure this is what heaven looks like. Like, with everybody joyfully singing and rejoicing, and everyone looks different, and everyone is different ages and different races, but we're all singing and we're all praying the same prayer. Like, I, that opening mass hit me in a way no other mass has. Like,
and that's a powerful moment that sets the stage for the whole experience. Because it's not just one day. I mean, you have World Youth Day as like the cap to a whole week's worth of activity and experiences. So it's not just one day. So like when we talk World
it's really
Youth Day,
World Youth Week.
Yeah.
I don't know why they never changed that. But
right. But I mean, it's and it's not just like, hey, you're just coming up with stuff to do.
No.
There's scheduled things that are just on a huge scale. And yeah, that first opening mass, especially being out there in a field with millions of people, you know, and that's the thing that
millions
shocked me, you know, because in my mind, like the Bills game was probably the biggest thing that I was a part of, you know, and that's what, over 70,000 people.
Right.
That's a lot of people. So you come walking out of a Bills game, like it's a crowd, you know. Well, actually, World Youth, not World Youth Day, March for Life was actually probably the biggest.
Right. But even that's like 100,000, a couple 100,000.
Yeah, you know, and to me, like, okay, all right, that's a lot of people, but you know, you're all kind of marching in a row.
And you're like spread, like even March for Life, like, because I've been to March for Life as well. Maybe like in the biggest years, I feel like 500,000 or something was the number, and like that's a lot. But like in a 1 mile like line, whereas when you are in a square, it's a different feel.
Sea of people,
right? Because you never at March for Life, I feel like I never saw the crowd other than when you see like somebody took an aerial photo of us. But in World Youth Day, you feel like I'm in the middle of millions of people right now, you know? And sometimes that can be a scary feeling, and sometimes it can be an amazing feeling, and everything in between.
And when you're there, like maybe as your eye can see, you know, you see people around you, and you're like, oh, all right. But then they would do like aerial shots, and it would show up on the screen where you just see, you're like, I'm somewhere in there, you know, it's just blobs of people.
Yeah.
And
you get the orangest flag you can wave to try to pick yourself out, you know.
When the crowd would start moving, so everyone's in place and everything's going on, that's one thing. But as soon as something ends and you have this just sea of people that start moving, that's always terrifying, trying to make sure everyone's together.
It
is.
Is.
You're like, all right, who's where? And we're drifting. You know, yeah, that's crazy.
I had to trust in the Lord a lot that He would just, if we got separated, we would find each other again, and we always did. I think the most profound experience in Krakow of that like anxiety of separation was when we were making the pilgrimage to the vigil site. And I truly feel like God's grace is so amazing, and I couldn't believe it. But so we had about 200 pilgrims. There were a handful that chose not to go to the vigil. This is towards the end of the pilgrimage. They were worried about it's about a 10-mile hike and sleeping in a field overnight. And that's true for every World Youth Day. So for those who come to Lisbon, you'll get that similar experience. But everybody's walking to the same place. So this is when suddenly the crowds condense a lot. And we departed, and our staff decided that Kathy Goller would be the end, and she would like make sure our very last pilgrims, like in our line of people got there. Mike Slish would be the leader, and I would be in the middle. And we all had, the three of us had flags, and everyone else was just like, make sure you don't go past the Mike's flag and make sure, you can see Kathy's flag, but we might get separated. And if you get separated, look for a Buffalo World Youth Day flag. And you start and it's good and people are around you and stuff, but then there's kind of some bottleneck areas. And I've never been so close physically to other people. Like, there's Americans have different ideas of like how close is too close than Europeans. And so we had been experiencing that like on the trams and stuff, like what in general Americans, even in New York City in a busy day, would a tram door would open and you'd be like, that's full, I'll wait for the next one. Like, Europeans have we could fit at least half as many people back in there, so your cheeks are shoved up against each other, and there's no, like, you can't move your arms, so I had experienced that a little bit, but in that crowd, like, that, I did feel like that was the one time I got like a little like, whoa, this is a little overwhelming, like the amount of people that are closing in on me. But when we got into that bottleneck, I'm waving my flag and there were Buffalo people around me. But by the time we got out, now I'm the middle diocesan staff person, or at least I'm supposed to be. And we got out of that and I saw no one I knew. No, like, I saw no Buffalo people. And I'm like, well, I'm holding the flag. I'm just going to keep waving my flag and hope people find me. Because, like, and it was a little while before I saw, like, any Buffalo people. But then suddenly they're like, oh, Sarah, we've been looking for a flag. We're so glad we found one and stuff. Wow. And so then I felt better, and I'm like, okay, well, I haven't passed Mike and I haven't seen Kathy. So I'm just going to guess that they're okay and they're with people and stuff. Well, then you can imagine, if you've been to World Youth Day, if you haven't, you can just imagine logistically planning where millions of people sleep in a field and what sections they're in. Is you plan and then you do your best. And I think the World Youth Day team did a great job for what is possible, but we all know at some point crowds are going to do what crowds do. And so we knew we were assigned, due to our country and our group and things, like we were supposed to be in this, one of these quadrants of grass, basically. They had them roped off. And they did that so people could find each other later, like come back to J47, like a big parking lot, but, well, Mike gets there and we don't even get close to ours, and they're like, this section's full, too bad, nope, nobody else can get in here. We're like, well, we're supposed to be there. Yeah, no, doesn't matter. Like, you and a lot of people are supposed to be here, but it's full. And so then it's like, as we were looking around, like, things are just full, and like, we have 200 people, like, we need a significant chunk of land, and that's in my head. I was like, there's no way we're all going to be together. So we're just going to have to make sure everybody's with some people. And at that point, Mike and I, like, people who were with him and people who were with me came together, like because we kind of had got to the end of where we could go. And there's this fence and they say, do not climb the fence. But there's right in front of us, like a big area. And this is where Kathy really played to our strengths of who should be the leader, who should be the middle, and who should be the end. She was caring for pilgrims that were going down of heat stroke and things like that. Mike Slish is one of the most adaptable people in the universe. And his strength, we were both looking at this plot of land, but the rule follower in me was like, but they say don't jump the fence, and I don't know what we should do. What do you think we should do? But in my head, I was like, I totally think we should, but like, I don't know. And Mike didn't think he's like, we need to do it. Like, people are tired and exhausted, and he did it, and we're like, all right, we're doing it. And we did it, and we started laying people, backpacks down and stuff. And we're like, this is where we are. And slowly people from our group got to us. And then we eventually, Kathy got to us, because you might be saying, why aren't you using cell phones? Like, there's millions of people trying to use cell phones, so they don't work. So eventually Kathy she was in the medical tents with some people, but she had gotten there, and we're like, okay, we got to take attendance. Like, who do we have? And then let's see if we can try to figure out at least everyone's with somebody. And I was the one who started taking attendance by going to every group leader I saw, because our group was really a group of parishes. So I find Adam, like, do you have all your people? Yeah, everybody. I have everybody. And I was like, what? And every single one, I was like, praise God, thanks. All the St. Greg's people are here. And then I'd go up to the next St. Amelia's. Kathy, wait, yeah, all my people are here. We all made it. We're good. We're so excited. Wow, praise God, all of them made it. And I started crying at the end, because every single pilgrim made it to that plot of land. A couple had to go back to the hotel because of medical reasons, but everyone who wanted to be there and could stay for the vigil was together. Hundreds, like over 100 of us, in this seemingly impossible scenario that we would have all found each other. We weren't where we were supposed to be. So it's not even like the go to J47 worked anymore. But we kind of like all looked out for each other, waved if we saw someone, hey, we're right here, we're right here. And like God, and that's where I was like, only God could have brought this many people who were completely split up at different points in this 10-mile journey, in seas and oceans of people, frankly. We all got here, and we're all safe. And like the weight that lifted off us as group leaders, because now we're not wondering like, where's the one lost sheep, I need to leave the 99 and swim, Right. But we were all there, and that allowed us to spiritually enter into what the vigil was and had to offer. But it also, I absorbed the miracle of that whole night, like looking around, like, all of St. Greg's is here, all of this parish is here, we're all here, like right here. Like, I couldn't believe it. I really couldn't.
Man. And there's always stories.
There is always stories.
There's just so many stories from that trip that you just see God's mercy poured down.
Mercy, yeah.
And it was a merciful trip. I mean, the theme of it was divine mercy, right?
Yeah.
And, was it a different name? No, that's right, divine mercy. And yeah, that is right. So, but the mercy that was just shown through the trip was awesome. Lived up to the hype. Yeah. Lived up to the name. So Lisbon.
Yeah. So we hope we got you excited that you want to come and experience something like that, but very unique and different, because every World Youth Day is unique and different.
True.
Yeah.
There's an adventure on each one. In Lisbon, is going to be right there with Fatima. Fatima is going to be really kind of a driving theme for this one.
Yeah.
So a beautiful place of faith. I haven't been there myself, but I mean, just to be acquainted with the story of Fatima. It's an amazing story. Right there in Portugal. And everything that I hear about Portugal is that it's beautiful. The food is awesome. There's a lot of history, of course. But the Portuguese are just so dedicated to Mary. And that is a really cool thing, especially jumping into the theme here, especially with the times of today. I think we could really use the message of Fatima leading us to Jesus, because I think with everything that's going on, we can use something that's pointing us in the direction that Jesus is leading us to. And I think Fatima is just like the message of the times, I'm really excited about that.
A lot of times it's easy to look at Fatima as a miracle that happened a long time ago, but like in the history of salvation, like we're living in the time of Fatima, like it really wasn't. When we, history gets condensed, the more there is. And so I agree. I think that message is powerful, and I think the there's power in the message of Fatima that the world is under Mary's mantle, and like how much do we all need that right now,
And I think with that story of the 20th century, because you had Fatima, like with this one, that was only 100 years ago. You're right. Like that's not long ago.
right,
The same great grandparents I was talking about that fled
right,
Poland fled at the same time Fatima was going on
happening.
over there, and so it's just a couple of generations removed from us, and I think there's so much that we can pull out of that for today. You're right, like we're living it today, and the message is just so relevant. But when you look at pictures, it's easy to say like, oh, it's all black and white and old stuff, and so like it's, what does that have to do with today? I think it's something that you would really appreciate, and especially with World Youth Day, they dig into this with the amount of speakers that they have, the experiences that you get to be a part of, the various masses. It really drives home these points and gives a deeper faith and appreciation for where the church is leading its people. And it is a big tent place. You have people from all around the world that are converging on that. And I think that message at Fatima is going to be really interesting, because there was crowds of people at Fatima, and here we will be in crowds of people at Fatima just 100 years later. How cool would it be if we saw like the miracle of the sun?
Yeah, the light. Yeah, I was gonna say. Yeah.
Woo!
Yeah.
You don't want to miss that, right?
No.
So get the tickets. So, okay, so this is coming up. 3 years. It's not a long time.
It's really 2.5. I mean, we're
right. 2.5, right? Yeah. So what are you what do you already have in motion, and what kind of a track do you kind of see yourself going down to get there?
So the official dates of World Youth Day Lisbon, we could share this with everybody, have not been announced. They have said it will be in July/August of 2023. So we know a pretty narrow window. Krakow was like that last week of July, first week of August. We're kind of thinking it might be right around the same. But until the Vatican says it's July 28th through August 7th, like specific dates, we are a little bit in the like pre-registration mode. So for our group, we have chosen the company we're gonna travel with and go with, but until those dates are released, we can't actually register people. So right now, and that all just happened like this week. So our next step is going to be really just doing this, sharing the word with people that we're going, to plant the seed for people to really start thinking about this. The investment, and it's the same for a lot of different groups, but for the option we chose, will be approximately $4,500, which can sound like sticker shock. I can appreciate, but we have 2 years to fundraise. Our parish fundraised a lot for Krakow, that it really, really, really got the cost down. Krakow was about 4,000, so comparable. So the earlier you sign up, the more time you have to kind of budget your own finances, ask for Christmases, birthdays, summer job savings. You put those away a little bit at a time, and it's not so bad. Nobody's asking anybody to write a check for that, unless you sign up 90 days before we leave. Which you're welcome to, actually. Yeah.
Just throw it down.
So that's kind of where we're at right now. Just I'm going to start doing some parent info meetings probably in a couple months.
Awesome.
One thing I think we should talk about is who World Youth Day is for. So in the United States, we talk about youth and youth ministry and youth group, and we think high school only. In worldwide and especially Europe, youth really applies to like late high school through the young adult years. So World Youth Day is really geared towards pilgrims who are like 18 to mid 30s. And when World Youth Day was hosted, the only time it was hosted in the United States was when it was in Denver. Because it was in the United States, that's when it kind of started to also include those like older high schoolers. So we, when the diocese went, in most dioceses, we take like 16 and up, but I don't want 33-year-olds to think like, oh, they're talking about that thing for the high schoolers, because like really it's more for you almost. Yeah, any that youth and young adult age is who we're targeting.
And that's what I think I'm leaning towards, is just having 18 to what we call them 30 somethings, just keeping it young adult. But you're right about that. You get caught up in that lingo of like, this is just for the teens, youth ministry and teens. But I think especially for young adults, you've already kind of developed a little bit to the point where you know what's going on. You kind of have a good sense of either your faith or just kind of how the world is going. So when you go into a trip like this, I think you're well received, or well prepared to receive a lot of the experience in a way that maybe kind of goes over your head as a teen. When we took teens on to Germany for World Youth Day in Germany, a lot of the stuff we kind of had to walk them through and explain, which is great. I mean, that's a good thing to do. But for the adults, there was definitely more adult experiences there that maybe the teens weren't aware of, ever heard of, or seen. So, not saying teens can't get anything out of it, but I think the young adults is just
they definitely
primed
can.
for it. That they're just primed and ready.
Yeah.
So, all right, so that's exciting. So you're well on your way of getting your group going. There's some sound checks happening in the gym. Sorry about that. Sounds like a transformer out there. It's not. There you go. So we're since our conversation, maybe a week ago, I've gotten back into my notes. I'm sitting down and starting to set some targets of, all right, here's when I want to kind of secure a company and start getting people onboarded. And so we've been chatting about it, and I've been dropping hints and having some conversations about World Youth Day for a little bit, but now I'm like, all right, guys, this summer, get ready to sign up. And so get ready. This summer, spring, summer, we're going to start getting people out and having some more conversations on a bigger scale of here's what this is looking like. So, wow, this is exciting.
Yeah.
Other groups in the area that are going. So John Malik, I've got him for another coffee talk that's coming up. I'm sure this is going to be coming up.
Yeah.
So I know he's looking to take a group. He's already got people signed up.
Yeah, he's actually further down than we are. So he had gotten people signed up when it was going to be in 2022. So like they were already kind of
ready
the train was rolling, and now they just have a whole extra year to kind of fundraise and prepare. So
that John, he's a sharp guy.
I think from my conversation with him, like their group is full and solid, and it's going to be the group that has been on the journey so far. Yeah, he is the only one I've talked to that for sure, but I've heard interest from other places, and we had a lot of parishes go to Krakow, so I would anticipate some will be wanting to go again.
Cool. Well, I think as this kind of moves along, we'll have to do some more coffee talks and keep everyone up to date on the progress here.
Yeah.
But I am excited for doing some of these pre-events, and I think maybe we can team up,
absolutely
get some people in Buffalo together, and we can do some of these things. I think that's going to be exciting.
Yeah. So, I mean, the hope of World Youth Day is not that it's it's a pilgrimage, it's not a trip, and so it needs planning ahead of time, spiritually as much as fundraising. That's another blessing of it starting 2 years out. You have time to really, how's God moving in your life over the next 2 years, and how is this pilgrimage fitting into how God's moving in your life in other ways. But then it's bringing that energy and that joy that is almost impossible not to absorb at some level at World Youth. Like, even if you had a bad World Youth Day, I feel like you'd have to have at least a little bit of joy dripping down on you. That it's bringing that back to Buffalo. If it stays in Portugal, well, then Portugal's going to get a great big shot in the spiritual arm of the Catholic Church, but that would be sad. The purpose of World Youth Day, which is the purpose of every time Jesus gathered people, it's you're gathered and you're sent, not you're gathered and that was a cool gathering. At the end of Mass, we are sent, and so I definitely want pilgrims, even if we travel separately or together, like to really prepare our hearts together, but also then to come evangelize Buffalo with this new energy that we got from this experience. And miracles happen at World Youth Day. Like, I know I have my own miracle stories of things that happened at World Youth Day. Other people do. We need to come back and share those with people. And I think if any place is going to need that joy and excitement and energy, it's Buffalo right now. So
Right.
I think pre-pilgrimage and post-pilgrim plans when we're home of how do we come back to our parishes with new light and energy.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, awesome.
Yeah.
This is probably a good place to leave it.
All
Leave
right.
people wanting some more. So, hey, thanks for tuning in, and thanks for joining for Coffee Talk. I think this was a great conversation.
Yeah.
So, good way to start kicking things up and get people riled up for World Youth Day. So, if you like this, share it with somebody that you know, or if you want to see more of it, we have our YouTube channel here. Just subscribe, hit the bell if you want to receive notifications when we go live. And that's it. That's what we got for you. I want to close this in prayer.
Sure, I'd love to. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. Father God of all nations and all humanity, we open our hearts to you today. Thank you for stirring energy and excitement and love deep within each of us. Thank you for the church and World Youth Day, and thank you for planting the seed in the hearts and minds of pilgrims that you've already ordained are going to be coming. We just don't know it yet. We don't know who we are. We don't know where we are or how we'll be called, but we know that you know, and your hand is moving. And we ask you to bless the country of Portugal and their plans, the World Youth Day team on the ground. We ask you to bless Adam and St. Greg's and Our Lady of the Sacred Heart and any other parishes here and across the world that are just starting these plans, that you would just pave the way financially, spiritually, help the right people hear about it, help us to speak about it in a way that glorifies you, Lord. We pray for our world that's struggling in a lot of ways, Lord, struggling with this pandemic, struggling spiritually, with despair. And we ask you, Lord, to just wrap your grace and your mercy around all of us across the world, across the diocese. And we ask your presence to be felt in our hearts. And Mary, we ask for your intercession, the way you revealed yourself to those children at Fatima. Show up in our lives and help us undeniably see the work of your prayers. Lead us to your Son always. And we ask you to intercede for Coffee Talk and for our ministries and for our church right now. Hail Mary, full of grace. The Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thanks.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a great day. Oh, look at that. I just found an extra atom here. You know, sometimes stuff just shows up. And there you go. There, now that's right. Take care.